Welcome back to DarkScript, and this time we'll talk about the unit that provides power to the whole system, the power supply unit. So let's see the brief overview of what a power supply actually is. The PSU, or the power supply unit, is an electric component that provides power to at least one electrical load or circuit. A computer's power supply is the same component that receives power from an external source and provides it to the motherboard, the internal components, and the peripheral devices. This is accomplished by connecting one end of the power cord to a power source and the other end to the PSU's power socket, or power input. The power output is determined by the type of PSU and the power connectors which are plugged into the motherboard or to the other components. Every power supply has a power switch that turns the device on and off and some built-in cooling system, like a fan for instance, that prevents over-temperature failures. A computer's power supply would distribute the current to all computer's components such as the motherboard, the hard drives and the optical drives, etc., using power connectors such as SATA power connectors or ATX power connectors. They come either as standalone, built-in, or hybrid mode. The standalone power supplies are typically external devices used to charge a battery, and you can find them mainly in laptops. Built-in power supplies are found in desktop computers and need to be manually set up inside the box. The hybrid power supplies are similar to the built-in but are self-contained. So let's review some common types of power supplies. First, let's talk about the regulated linear power supply. In this type of power supply, the voltage is regulated on the output and ensures the output voltage will remain at the rated value of the power supply regardless of the current that the device is consuming. The voltage regulation means the input voltage does not affect the output. This used to be the most common type of power supply for PCs, but has been replaced by the switch mode power supply due to its cost, weight, and size improvements. Next, let's talk about the unregulated power supply. In this type of power supply, the voltage is not regulated on the output, contrary to regulated power supplies. Those devices are designed to generate a certain constant voltage at a particular current. They must be matched as precisely as possible to the requirements of the device they're powering. The third one is the switch mode power supply. It is also known as switched mode and switching mode and has HE or high efficiency functionalities and is widely used in devices that require stability and efficiency in the way power is provided and maintained. This is accomplished by converting power using switching devices that are turned on and off at high frequencies. This is the most common type of power supplies nowadays used in modern computers. The last one is the ferro-resonant power supplies. These types of power supplies are specifically designed to maintain a constant voltage over load current variations. Moving on. On the right, you can find different dimension standards for common power supplies. You can find the power supply standard, the width, the height, the depth. It is very important to check the size of the power supply and its compatibility to your computer before purchasing one. Let's talk about the power supply ATX power connector. Most home computer power supplies work with ATX connectors to match the ATX motherboard standard. ATX power connectors are the most common types of connectors for computer motherboards. The connector has 20 or 24 pins and is considered the largest of all connectors. In older AT power supplies, this connector was split into two parts, P8 and P9 only. A power supply with a 24-pin connector can be used on a motherboard with a 20-pin connector. In cases where a motherboard has a 24-pin connector, some power supplies come with two connectors, one with 20 pins and the other with 4 pins, i.e. 24 pins form. This can be used together to form the 24-pin connector and support the motherboard requirements. The most recent and common standard of ATX is the ATX2. On the right, you can see both ends of the connector and see the types of voltages it can provide to different elements. The types of voltage produced by AT or ATX power supplies are 3.3 volts DC, 5 volts DC, minus 5 volts DC, 12 volts DC, and minus 12 volts DC. So how do we choose a power supply for our system? Power supply models differ from each other in several ways. Before choosing the right power supply for your system, you might want to consider the following. The first important thing is the power requirements. So the first thing to do is determine how much power or wattage your computer actually requires. This can be calculated using the Outer Vision power supply calculator. We'll do a demonstration later. The second important consideration is choosing the right brand of power supply, as some unknown brands like to advertise their product wattage rating as much higher than what they can actually deliver. Avoid purchasing from cheap and no-name power supply manufacturers, and buy only from well-known brands such as EVGA, Antec, Silverstone, Seasonic, or Corsair. And lastly, we have the 80 Plus program. The 80 Plus program is a voluntary certification program which is intended to promote efficient energy use in computer power supplies. During the conversion of AC power to DC power, there might be some loss of power to heat. A decent power supply can convert at least 80% of the AC power to DC power. Highly efficient power supplies can convert more than 90% of the AC power to DC. So before buying a power supply, you can always review the product box for an 80 plus label, such as the following. Now, before ending this session, I want to do a quick demonstration of the Outer Vision power supply calculator, just to show you how useful this tool is. So this is the Outer Vision power supply calculator, and as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. So we can either select a basic or an expert evaluation, but for now, let's just choose the basic one. Let's not spend too much time on it. So the first thing I want to choose is the type of motherboard I have. So in this case, it's going to be just a regular desktop. Next, I need to choose how many CPUs I have, how many processors I have. So in my case, I have one processor with 4 cores, and I'm going to select the type of processor I have. So it's an i7, and here I can select the exact model. So it's an i7 4790. i7 4790. There you go. This is the number of memory modules I'm going to have installed on my computer. So it's 2 memory modules, and each one of them is 8 gigabytes of DDR3. The video adapter, that's going to be an NVIDIA. I have one video adapter. Let's find it, GTX 950. Storage devices, well, that's not very flexible, but let's try to be as accurate as possible. So I have one SSD. I have 3 more hard drives and a couple of USB drives. So let's say 4 more. So let's say 4 SATA drives of 5400 RPM. Optical drives, I have 1 for CD and DVD. Doesn't really matter which one we choose here. And I got 2 monitors of 24 inches. And that's pretty much, oh no. In my case, I will be using my work laptop much more often, 8 hours a day. When I'm home, I would usually spend, let's say, 4 hours a day and no gaming. Yeah, you heard me right, no gaming. And let's calculate now. And this is actually pretty cool. I didn't even notice it before, but it actually recommends you the type of power supply that would match your system needs. And that's how you start building a computer. You first make a list of components that you're going to install, and then you calculate how much power will be required for them to work. And finally, you choose the right power supply. And this is extremely important. So in my case, I require at least, let's say the recommended voltage is 400 watts. And this is for all the components to be properly powered. So that's all. This is the Outer Vision power supply calculator. So thank you again for bearing with me so far, and I really hope that this guide will help you make the right choices and avoid beginner's mistakes when you decide to buy your power supply. So I'll see you in the next video, in which we'll be talking about cooling units.